Oh, you did well on those high notes. Good on you. We're going to have some family reflections now. I believe Jan is going to get us started, and then Alex and then Hugh are going to speak. And I hope you're looking forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, family and friends. For those who don't know me, I'm Betty's eldest daughter, Jan Dixon. Welcome to Mum's Thanksgiving service. I'm pleased to give you a short history of Mum's life, together with some reflections of mine and those of other people, which they have recently shared with me. Dear Mum's life began at Kogarah Hospital on the 28th of October 1927. She's the second daughter of George and Jessie Gadd. Mum attended South Hurstville Primary School, where she was an avid participant. This was to stand us in good stead, so we three children, Bradley, Gail and I, knew our maths tables. Diligently, she ensured we practised our spelling lists and practised reading at home, so we all did well at school. You may have noticed I used Bradley's full name, not just Brad, because it was a Mackay family name from Mum's side, dating back to the naming of Bradley's Head near the Botanic Gardens. Mum left school in her third year of high school. From the ages of 15 to 17, Mum's first occupation was at Swan's hardware store, Hurstville, where she was employed in typing and bookkeeping. This prepared her for many work settings to come. Sadly, her mother suffered from clots, so Mum left work to help with home duties, caring for her mum and dad, older sister Elva, one older brother Jim, and younger brother George, who is here today. She was able to go back to work, this time at May and Baker in the city, after helping out at home for a few years. This was a workplace she thrived in, work she enjoyed, wonderful long-time friendships, special bosses, who she often spoke about. And have a look at the photo that's in the hall of her at work at the typewriter, a very beautiful young woman. Our mum was attracted to her darling, our dad, John, from the age of 12. As she watched him come into church with his mum and dad and two sisters each Sunday morning, she loved his alabaster hand, she said. There's young Dad in that same frame too in the hall, in his army uniform. So, Betty and John were married on the 4th of October 1952. I came along 1 year later, Gail a little over 3 years later, then our little brother Bradley John, 6 years later. Mum also taught us good table manners and etiquette, and how to set a table properly. Some remember her tables were always set with a cloth tablecloth and material serviettes. Not only did she set a pretty table, but cooked delicious, nutritious food every night and sent us off to school with healthy lunches, sandwiches and fruit, and ensured we ate no rubbish food. And many of my 17 cousins have mentioned, as I've chatted to them, that Mum was a great cook. She was hospitable to everyone and set a lavish table, all achieved from the smallest of kitchens in our Oatley home. She managed to feed, clothe, do homework, etc. with us, attending to us lovingly and unselfishly, whilst also assisting Dad in their shops. Firstly, in the Arncliffe menswear shop, with accounts, serving customers and advising on colours. Dad was colourblind. In menswear, or weighing up foods in the second shop, the Oatley Health Food Shop. We children enjoyed the yummy cakes that were sometimes left over after the shop closed. Do you call a sweet cream cake a health food? Dad completed a child welfare course, so Mum nurtured us while Dad studied and worked away from home. Used her skills in many a setting inside and outside our home. She and Dad invited many visitors, missionaries to friends, family and acquaintances, to our dinner table. Here at Mortdale Baptist Church, she helped cater for many a wedding banquet for youth group couples in the youth hall out the back. The ladies lugged pots, plates, food in and out of the hall and did all the washing up by hand. Also went back to her work roots by occasionally helping with paperwork in the office. Later, she was to help with morning teas, welcome many ladies to MOBC Women's Craft Group. Today, you see the brass vases of flowers generously arranged by Deb Boston and Linda Mooney. Thanks, Deb and Linda, for that, an afternoon tea you've prepared for us. Vases are to remind us that Mum was on the flower roster here and used those same vases. For 2019, some cousins, aunties and uncles, family and friends remember they enjoyed a cuppa and delicious homemade cake with her at her home in Oatley, looking over the Georges River, because she still remembered in great detail family histories, details of her holidays overseas with Dad, and so much more. Know that, don't we, Narelle? She not only taught we children to read and write English, but assisted at MOBC's non-English speakers group called JAM, helping many to improve their English. And in order to teach scripture in some public primary and high schools nearby, Mum learned to drive at 50. I think that's a great feat. Happily also assisted an elderly spinster friend, Miss Betty MacDonald, some of you might remember her, with doctor's visits, cleaning and a myriad of other tasks Miss MacDonald needed. Caring for elderly, sick or needy has been a practice all her life, and Fran referred to that. Yeah, thank you, Fran. Including her mum and mother-in-law. I'm reminded of Jesus saying, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for others in my name, you did it for me. That's from Matthew 25:40. Sadly, Dad had cancer. Lovingly cared for him through years of terrible cancer symptoms, many medical visits and painful procedures, and valiantly watched the love of her life's health decline until 2017 and his passing into heaven. 14 years later, they're both in heaven. Because they named Jesus as their Saviour and Lord and believed in him. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Mum missed Dad so much. Also grieved the loss of special times with many neighbours. Some are here today. Brell, Darryl, Cliff and Maureen on Annette Street, Oatley. Friends Gwen and John when she had to leave Oatley. Sadly, pain and very poor eyesight plagued her for the past 2 years. Staff at her home loved her jokes and even said she could hold a tune. Once sang on the radio when she was young and remembered all the words of one song after a nurse played it on a piano. This was only a month ago. I have had the great privilege of visiting Mum a few times each week for the past 2.5 years at Osborne Aged Care Facility in Nowra, after taking turns with Gail caring for Mum in our homes. At the beginning of her time at Osborne, she could also come home to our home and have lunch and sit a while each week or so. I used to chat with Mum, laugh over silly situations, helping with some personal needs, and talk about the past, and I'd tell her about our family. Gail and I would like to acknowledge Osborne Terraces for their deep dedication to our Mum. Loving, care, professionalism, Mum so very, very well. This is our Mum, long-term friend to many over the years, devoted mother, nana and great-nana, faithful wife and so much more. Brad shared his thoughts on my mum at the committal. You may like to ask him to share whilst you have something to eat and a cuppa after this Thanksgiving service. Also, the live stream of, we had hoped there would be the committal, but there's a USB now, a committal, which you might like to get hold of if we can, which includes Brad's reflection. So thank you, Pastor Matthew, for assisting in this special memorial to Mum. Thanks for speaking God's word to us this afternoon. Thanks also to Jeff Stanbury, our brother-in-law, for setting up the live streaming which Ross is doing, so that those who could not be here could join us in the Remembering Mum now, or if there's anyone you know, after the service has finished at 2 o'clock. My niece Alex and nephew Hugh, Gail's children, will now share their thoughts on Nana. Thank you everyone for coming to honour Mum's long 93 and a half years. Please join us for afternoon tea.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope no one's got plans later on this afternoon, because this might take a little while, as you can already hear in my voice. So, first up, Alex and I have a few words, but first I'd just like to, Mum and Brian have given their thoughts that they'd like us to pass along on their behalf. And as I said, so here we go. Alex is obviously going to help me. Mum had a gracious strength of character. She led by example, she was kind and thoughtful. You said,
I'll speak it from here.
Yeah.
A wonderful homemaker. Both Mum and Dad enjoyed having visitors and entertaining. In 1985, Mum and Dad had a wonderful experience travelling overseas. There were often recollections of their time away. There were many times travelling in their mobile home, or later driving in their car to visit members of the family. Mum missed her John.
Maybe we should have just put her on a PowerPoint or something like that, who passed away in April 2007. Her care of Dad at home was a quiet example of her love and strength. There was great sadness for Mum in January 2019, having to leave her beautiful home of 51 years. Her dear neighbours, Brother George and many friends, and those at Mortdale Oatley Church. Mum moved to Osborne House in Nowra due to her frailty and failing eyesight. The staff at Osborne House noted Mum's wicked sense of humour and great love of music. Mum was cared for with love and respect. There were some difficult times with COVID restrictions, but telephone calls were all we could do for a few months. Visits to Mum will be greatly cherished by us all. Mum would always say to us, "Go steady," when we left to travel home.
On Huey and I behalf. So our Nana was special.
She was our Nana with boats. She didn't have any boats per se, but she had all the boats on the Georges River, and we could watch them there with her for hours. We're useless. You'd think we would have learned after Pars. Along with the planes.
We feel very fortunate that we were able to spend so much of our childhood with Nana, and we were able to continue our connection and friendship well into adulthood. We feel blessed that for so many of those years, she had part,
As I said,
by her side, and that the majority of the years after Pa died, that she was in good health and we were able to enjoy Nana's company. I treasure the fact
that in her later years she was able to get to know her great-grandchildren. I don't have any of those, but the other ones, that was supposed to be Lex, who love her dearly. She always gave warm greetings and farewells, always meeting us at the door for a welcome hug after we'd raced up the stairs to ring the bell, or answering the phone with 4317. I just can't get quite as high as her though. Then finding out it was us and saying, "Oh, hello, my darling," or in my case, "Oh, hello, my favourite grandson."
Just to be clear, he's the only grandson.
I'm the only one. But it made me feel very special. To farewell us, Nana would often pack little parcels of food for our trip home. A bag of peanuts or sultanas tied with a twisty tie. She would give us a big hug, tell us to be good for Mum, and send us on our way with a "now you go steady." From under the liquid amber tree out the front, she would give us a wave off until we drove out of sight, always requesting a phone call from the other end to make sure we'd made it home safely. She gave the best cuddles, as Uncle Brad spoke about, but you couldn't stop at one. It seemed as time went on that we were getting a bit too tall for cuddles, but it worked out perfectly, Nana, as she started to shrink and fit under our arms, so she'd wrap her arms around our middle. Nana was elegant in every way. Her house was always a welcoming, tidy home with delicious home-cooked meals, a warm and comfy bed, and somewhere to relax. We would often be regaled with stories of the menswear shop she and Pa owned. And Nana always had her own style with clothing, and she was always well-dressed and smart, with a scarf or a brooch to top the outfit off.
Nana showed her love in subtle ways, in her actions. Most often this came across as ensuring we were always well fed, with offers of seconds always an option, especially for her boys, Pa of course included in this one. She was a wonderful host. Nana's meals were always a brilliant selection of foods, homemade cakes, hams, jams, fresh breads and cold meats and fresh salads. Amazingly, as Jan said, all created in the smallest of kitchens. If going out on a picnic to Gunnamatta Bay or Cars Park, Nana would provide an incredible array of food, including sandwiches, fruit, a thermos, and if lucky, even some ginger beer. Despite Nana being such a good cook, I seem to have a lot of memories of us racing around to the fire alarm, waving a tea towel to stop the smoke alarm from sounding after smoke coming over the top of the kitchen. As we'd head off anywhere, no matter the time of the year, she would always make sure we were dressed appropriately. She would review our clothing choices and invariably have to suggest another layer of clothing to rug up and stay warm and not get your kidneys cold. Her devotion to family and friends was evident in the community of friends she and Pa had through church and through being loyal friends and neighbours. Whether it was through conversation, visiting them, meeting them at church, or just being in regular contact with Nana and Pa while at 24 Annette Street, we enjoyed that. This is all me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep going. Nana always showed a keen interest in our progress at school and beyond. She was always so proud of her children and grandchildren's achievements in their lives. The foundation on which our family is built is the love of Nana and Pa. We recall...
Here we go.
No. Nana's care and devotion to Pa always, but particularly when he was so unwell. He and his Bet did so much together and enjoyed each other's company, walking hand in hand together as they walked along the esplanade at Cronulla or just around the block for an afternoon stroll.
Our enduring memory of Nana is her wonderful, cheeky and witty sense of humour. One of our favourite things to do was get Nana giggling. Once she started, her whole body would shake and make us all laugh. An example of her cheek is remembered in the time Alex for Christmas once received a bum bag. Remember those bags that went around there?
It was the 90s. It
was the 90s. And Nana quietly commented after Alex had unwrapped, "I only bought it so I could say bum." Sometimes Nana appeared quite serious and you had to be listening carefully and sometimes to catch the funny thing that she had said. She could keep a very straight face when telling a joke, but when you caught on, she would give you a wry smile and a wink. For me, just in the last few weeks when visiting Nana in Osborne House, I spoke about Alex and her girls, and Nana asked where they were, and I replied, "They're back home at Crookle." And she said, "Crookle? A stupid name for a place, really, isn't it?" When you think about it, it really is. Nana was an intelligent woman who had a love of the English language, with wordplay and reading being great loves. I personally love sharing competitions with her in crosswords and also doing the 9-letter jumble with her in the paper and seeing who could get the most words.
Nana loved telling stories. Nana told us many times of the story where as a young girl she was being chased by her brother. Not sure which one, George. We'll have to follow up on that later. It was Jim. You can play. And she fell off the balcony into a thorny bush, as we remember it, and injured herself so badly that her diet had to consist of ice cream and jelly for so long, and then she couldn't really enjoy jelly after that. She would talk about the days of one of her first jobs when she was in the city for a pharmaceuticals company. The way she described the building sounded magical to me, with overhead lines to send things all around the building. Nana would fondly reminisce about her siblings and how, for example, Uncle George built the back room on their house, or how Auntie Elva had created these blankets, or how Uncle Jim had been shipwrecked. Amazing stories.
Her love for travel was great and one that she's instilled in us. From the moment we stepped foot into their camper van, we were smitten with the idea. We heard in detail the joys of big overseas trips, with Canada, Boston and the UK being firm favourites of her and Pa's. We were lucky enough to join them for some family holidays, including a big trip to see Uncle Brad up in Brisbane. We always had fun with them, visiting the Dornans at Summersby, going to the Blue Mountains and travelling to Nowra for special Christmases together.
It's said that you look back on the little moments and realise that they were, in fact, the big moments. Thanks to Catherine, the grandchildren have had an opportunity to reminisce about some of those little moments. So here's a snippet from the collective grandchildren's memory. In summer, Nana giving us ice cream bucket of water and some old scrubbing brushes and let us paint the concrete floor under the house. Hours of entertainment. Nana's special trifle jelly with small bits of chocolate hidden down the bottom. Going for drives in one of their snazzy cars and having boiled lollies covered in sugar. Cans of soft drink stored in the old fridge downstairs, especially ginger beer. On that note, anything with ginger in it, Nana loved. Sliding down the incredibly slippery shag pile carpeted stairs at Annette Street on our bottoms and always getting told off by Nana because it was so dangerous. Nana teaching me, can you wash your father's shirts on the piano? Classical music always playing in the house, Nana humming along and Pa whistling along. Speaking with Nana on the phone and her voice lighting up and becoming animated when she spoke to my girls, Isabel and Sophie. Nana calling out, yoo-hoo, when she wanted your attention.
Okay, yeah. Her constant furniture and photo rearranging in the house and decorating with big hydrangeas, talking with Mr. and Mrs. Crane in the street while we washed the car in the front yard, walking to the park in the cool of the evening, Nana serving up delicious custard in the blue and white ceramic jug, sitting on the step in the back room and using the red footstool as a table, Nana making a warm Milo for us and giving us one shortbread cream biscuit, ordering frog's legs and bee's knees from Nana's kitchen and her playing along, walking up the steep hill of Annette Street to the Oatley shops together, going to church with Nana and Pa and then picking up their friends on the way. And for us, when Nana and Pa came over for sleepovers at our houses, being woken up in the morning at Annette Street by Nana ringing a small little bell to let us know that breakfast was served. There's these memories and so much more. We thank Nana for her unconditional love.
You'll be truly missed by us all. Go steady, Nana.
The family have invited me to give a brief address, and thank you. I came to this church 14 years ago, and the very first person I visited in their home was Betty Fielding. I was warmly welcomed by her, and I never forgot that as she served tea in some what seemed to me, nice china, especially reserved for the pastor. I wasn't sure, probably not, maybe it was for everybody. She still had little cubes of sugar that was served with a pair of tongs, and that delighted me no end for some reason, and her hospitality was very, very genuine. It was clear that this was a home in which people had truly belonged for a long, long time. Just a few months before, however, Betty's husband John had died. We all eventually leave our earthly homes. What then? Is there somewhere else we belong? Christian hope of eternal life is, of course, our great consolation for those of us who believe that the Son of God died for sin and rose from the dead so that he could offer just that, life forever after death with God, who is our true home. But even the faithful waver in the valley of the shadow of death, and the disciples of Jesus certainly did. Jesus had spoken in John's Gospel of his own impending death, and the disciples are beginning to sense that his life and theirs are not going to work out as they had expected. Their hearts are troubled, as yours might be today. Jesus says in the reading at the start of the service in John 14 that they should not be troubled, because he will prepare a place for them so that they can belong in the house of God. Many Christians assume that Jesus is talking about some kind of work that he is doing in heaven, preparing mansions in the sky, as it were. But I assume he means something quite different. He says to the disciples he is about to go and prepare a place for them. And in John's Gospel, the very next thing he does is go to the cross in order to die for the sins of the world. It's through his death in our place that he prepares a place for us. Otherwise, we would still be in our sin, runaways from God and locked out from the acceptance of God. In other words, it's his work on our behalf that prepares our place with God. It's for this reason that Jesus says he alone is the way to God, and that no one can come to God unless they come through him. For who else lived without sin? Who else died in our place? Who else is the Son of God? Only him. We don't, in other words, have the right to let ourselves into the house, but Jesus does. It's his Father's house after all. That's the good news of the gospel. Betty believed it deeply. It was her consolation when John died. I know because she told me. And I hope it's not only your consolation now, but your personal belief as well. We're going to sing a final hymn, and it invites our own soul to be still, knowing that God has done all this for us. Be still, my soul. Let's stand. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to your God to order and provide. In every change, He faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, your best or heavenly friend. Through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, when dearest friends depart, and all is dark and in a veil of tears. Then shall you learn to know His love, His heart, who comes to soothe your sorrow and your fears. Be still, my soul, your Jesus can repay. From His own fullness all He takes away. Be still, my soul, the hour is hasting on, when we shall be benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless you.